Now, if all three legs of the stool are either knocked out or wobbly, you know what happens to whatever is sitting on the stool. It's falling on its tuchus sooner or later. And that's the challenge, I think, to your generation, is going to be to rebuild, to strengthen those three legs of the stool. You are going to have to be witnesses to the truth of biblical religion. You are going to have to reclaim, for reason, its rightful place in human affairs. And you're going to have to defend the notion of law as connected to those moral truths we can know by reason, not law as simply a matter of the coercive assertion of power by transient majorities. That's a very big task. I wish I could tell you it was going to be a simple one. It is not. But it's going to be a bracing challenge. There's nothing more exciting than fighting for the right things with good company and knowing that you've got the truth on your side. And it's very striking to me that after all of the bludgeoning the Catholic Church has taken over the past 200 years, it is the Church which remains the great defender of all three legs of the stool. It's the Church which obviously defends biblical religion, but the Catholic Church is now the premier institutional defender of the prerogatives of reason in the world, as it's the premier institutional proponent of human rights and democracy. So you've got a lot to work with in the social doctrine of the Church in taking on this challenge. And that's something I hope you'll all reflect upon during this very special time of the year that is Lent. So, thanks for coming, thanks for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you. We don't have a freestanding mic to pass around. Okay, just boom it out.
I guess it's a follow-up to a couple of those last couple points. In reference to the mandate, I've actually been very impressed by the bishops and the leadership of the church, how vocal they've been. And you said in the last 200 years, whether it was like Bismarck in Germany or the communists in Eastern Europe, whenever the church has been kind of attacked, there's actually been a growth of the Catholic culture from the bottom up. And maybe perhaps as the state is growing more secular and the attacks are becoming more direct, do you foresee perhaps a grassroots revival of kind of Catholic culture in response to that, as people kind of, as their faith is challenged, historically always responded in a really profound fashion? So is there a silver lining to the whole situation?
Did everybody hear the question? Couldn't hear it in the back. Okay. Let me see if I get this right. Does the challenge posed by the HHS mandate and the solidarity that the bishops have shown and the firmness they've shown in challenging this, does that hint at a grassroots revival of Catholic intensity in the country? Because it seems whenever the church is under real pressure, it grows. Well, this is a very old thought, as you know. The Tertullian back in the 2nd century, the blood of martyrs is the seed of the church. I think, in fact, what you are seeing, not only in the response of the bishops, but in response of ordinary Catholics. In my parish in suburban Washington, Sunday a week ago, parish I've been a member of for 28 years, I heard the first applause for a sermon in 28 years. Our permanent deacon, who's a retired scientist at the National Institutes of Health, gave a very forthright defense of religious freedom as the First and Human Rights, connected the mandate issue to that, and people just spontaneously burst into applause. So I think something is moving in the general Catholic population. We are going to win the mandate fight. We will not win it by getting a reasonable accommodation from the administration because they are too locked into their position. We're not going to get it in the Congress because of the Senate, but we are going to get it in the courts. We will win this in the federal courts, and we may well win it 9-0 in the Supreme Court. The question is, how can we turn this into a teachable moment for the kind of Catholic revival you're talking about? And I'm reasonably confident that that's going to happen. There's some new polling stuff out today that shows a significant majority of people against this mandate, including a significant majority of women. So the whole mainstream media narrative on this has in fact been wrong. I think there's real nervousness in the country about this kind of governmental intrusion, not just into the life of the Catholic Church, but evangelical Protestants, Orthodox Jews, employers of conscience who do not want to provide abortifacient drugs and sterilizations as a matter of health care. So I think something is moving here of a positive sense. Yes?
The current state of Europe, in your book, you refer to the revolution of 1968, and you also noted that the children of that era are starting to revert back to their Christianity. I was wondering if you could speak to us on a comparison of religion in the United States, which I perceive to be a little bit more than the religion of Europe, because your book kind of has a warning for us that we need to look at what's going on in Europe so that we have a vision of what could happen here.
Good. I better repeat some of that. The book in question is called The Cube and the Cathedral, from the images with which I started. And while we couldn't get any here tonight, you're certainly welcome to go out and order them up on Amazon when you get home. And in that book, I mentioned that actually it was a very interesting moment at the end of World Youth Day in 1997. There had been 500,000 kids showing up. There were 1 million people at the closing mass at the Longchamp Racecourse. And that Sunday afternoon, I went with a French friend down to his country place in Normandy so we could regather energies after a very busy week in Paris. And we got to his place and flipped on the TV for the evening news, and there was this thoroughly secularized anchorman and the Cardinal Archbishop of Paris, the great Jean-Marie Lustiger. And the anchorman was simply stammering. He couldn't believe what had happened. Where did all of these kids come from? What is going on here? And the Cardinal, who was a great man and a dear friend, was in a really feisty mood because he had just pulled off this great thing. And he just looked at the guy and said, look, you come from the generation of 1968, which abandoned the faith of your parents. Your children have decided that the nothing in which you live is not something they want. They've discovered the possibility of friendship with Jesus Christ. Don't get in their way. Well, we opened another bottle of champagne on that, and had a toast to the Cardinal. So the question is that next generation, in fact, re-Christianizing Europe? The short answer is no. I mean, while there are pockets of Catholic vitality in, all over Europe, and you had another million people in Madrid at the World Youth Day last year. Anybody here go to Madrid for World Youth Day? One. What is this? It was very hot. Very hot. Yay. Okay.
It was awesome.
It was awesome.
I'm
Okay.
going to Rio.
You're going to Rio. Okay.
The next one.
Show them what bathing suits really look like. It's pockets of Catholic intensity. Their situation is quite different from ours. America remains a deeply, if confusedly, religious country. Now, it is also true that one of the great divides in the country is between an increasingly aggressively secular high culture and a religious populace. I'm sure some of you in the course of your studies have read the works of the sociologist Peter Berger. Does that name mean anything to anybody? Please, somebody nod here. Tell me I'm not that old. Peter Berger is a great sociologist. He's also one of the funniest people in the world. And Peter, 25 years ago, thinking about this elite general population problem in America, said, Sweden is reckoned to be the most thoroughly secular society on the planet, and India is the most densely religious culture in the world. So what is America? America is a country of Indians ruled by an elite of Swedes. I mean, that's the peculiar, that you're supposed to laugh at. That's the peculiarity of our situation. This culture gap has been reinforced, in my view, by now some 70 years of extremely dubious Supreme Court jurisprudence on how should we understand the First Amendment and its two parts, free exercise and no establishment. My argument, the argument we've been trying to develop at the journal First Things for 20-some years now, is that those two clauses are not in competition, which seems to be the way the court thinks of it. Rather, the whole point of no establishment was to foster free exercise. You don't have the government in the church business, so that the churches and the synagogues and the mosques and all the rest can be in their business, can have free space to operate. That is not the way the court has been treating these cases really since 1947. It's as if the controlling idea or no establishment, and we permit bits of free exercise within it. This has led to a kind of nervousness about religious expression in public. It's led to all sorts of confusions about what the separation of church and state really means. And it's led to a kind of strengthening of this default aggressive secularism in high culture. This is not only bad domestically, it's bad for understanding the world.